Hello, my name is Joanne Sargent, and welcome to Choose Health. Many of us will face some very difficult challenges and stresses in our life when it comes to the realization that we have to make our loved ones safe, and that being our parents or our grandparents. And today I have a special guest with me, Jennifer Pilz. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And she's from Riverside Senior Care, and she's going to spend a very informative half hour with us sharing her experiences with this really difficult subject matter. So I'm really curious, Jennifer, how did you first get into this line of work?
That's a good question. I started off as a physical therapist. That's my background. And I was practicing in nursing homes and doing home care and could really see this need for more, not just the physical therapy piece, not just the medical piece, but I saw families really struggling. They had a lot of questions, and no one was there to kind of pull everything together for them. And I started to look into how I could go into a profession that would do that, not just the therapy piece, but really the big picture, helping them care for their aging loved ones. And I went online, did some research, and found out that, sure enough, there was a profession, professional geriatric care managers. So I went back and I got a certification, graduate level certification from the University of Florida, did an internship, later became certified. I worked with some locals. There were a lot of people already doing it. And now I'm a certified care manager and have my own practice and have clients, and it's really growing.
Wow, good for you. I mean, I think so many of us who might be listening to this program, watching this program, can really speak to some of their own experiences with the difficulty when you kind of have to get faced with those challenges. So why don't you take me through a scenario as to when or why would someone reach out to someone like you to help them out? I know it's daunting, but when does someone really, when's it important for them to reach out to you with those types of issues and concerns?
Well, when it typically happens is in a crisis. I'd say, unfortunately, at this point, people aren't really aware of what we do when it comes in a crisis. So it will be typically the elder loved one, the parent, falls at home. They go into the hospital, they get back out, maybe it happens again, and they're starting to say, what's going on here? What can we do to really get involved, and who can help us? And it's usually out of desperation that they call us in and realize that there were a lot of pieces maybe they didn't have together, and they really need a neutral third party to come in. It would be great, and I have had some people call me when they weren't sure about the next step. They see their elder in the home declining. Maybe they need to go into assisted living, but there wasn't quite a crisis. There are occasions where people can see that proactively and call us in, but typically we get called in a crisis when the family just, I can't do it anymore, I need help, and then we become involved.
Right. So you have a medical background. Do you think that that is advantageous for you in this particular field?
I definitely do, because usually, one of the big pieces that we look at is the medical piece, and I certainly have that background, and I understand how the medical system works. That's very important to know that it goes from the hospital to the rehab to the home with the VNA, and all the players that are involved. And I also know from working in the VNA and working in the nursing homes, what's missing. And usually that's just the whole picture of the person and pulling their individual needs together. So it's not just medical, but it helps very much to have that as a background, because I know the lingo. I can speak to physicians, and I often go on visits with the elder to the physician's office. And I can help them follow through on recommendations medically and otherwise, but especially medically, where a lot of times family members don't have that background. They don't have the medical background to be able to speak to the doctor and understand exactly what the recommendations might be. And if I don't know what they are, I know I have the resources to look them up.
Great.
And the background.
Great. And I'm sure then you take that medical information and then you can transfer it in more layman's terms to the children who need to understand what's really going on here. So I think that's incredibly valuable as well.
Yes.
And I know that this can be, again, a very difficult time for the children, whether you have siblings or whether you're a single child, an only child. But what do you see as the additional benefit to you being a third party in sort of this whole organization of this care management?
Well, I think it's very clear the minute we go in and evaluate an elder, they'll say, you know, my daughter keeps bugging me, or my son has this opinion and my daughter has this opinion, but nobody is really looking at what I want and what is my need here. And I think so much emotion is involved. It actually amazes me every time that I do an evaluation and meet a family how you can revert to your childhood relationship with your parents. You kind of go back to how you were as a child and how you relate to your siblings, and it's so emotional when it's your parent. And when I come in, yes, I can see the emotion, I can see the adult children and their struggles, but I can see the elder for where they are now, get to know them, get to know their history, and I don't have that emotional attachment that your child does. So I can make a little bit more of a rational decision without the emotional piece once I get to know the elder, and I think that helps a lot for everyone involved. It helps the elder be more likely to follow through on the recommendations, and it helps the children know that someone else is looking out for them, and they don't have to worry as much.
Right. That's great. You know, I think too that, you know, I have some friends that whether they're an only child or whether they have multiple siblings are and have had to go through these very difficult decisions, part of which has been to try and keep the loved one at home, to put as many services together as they can, but then in the back of the mind, you know, they're always thinking safety first. But I think too, one of the other challenges that they've faced, and I think that you bring certainly some value to that, is that sometimes I've known the siblings to hold on to the parent in their home simply because the financial burden that they understand may occur as a result of having the parent have to go into assisted living when none of that pre-planning has been done. And that's not really something that we think about when we're younger and healthy, but as children of older parents, it's something that many of us don't think about. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, just recently I had someone come to me, and actually this happened a few times recently, and I anticipate it will continue, is that they come to me when their elderly loved one is in their 70s. And they're declining. Maybe it's time for an assisted living. There's probably some dementia involved in both cases. And they think, how am I going to pay for an assisted living if they live into their 90s? Because that is what we're looking at here. You know, it's starting in the 70s. Maybe they're having a physical decline. Most likely it's cognitive. And they might need assisted living, but that's going to be a lot of years of paying for assisted living. So they need someone to talk to about that and see what their options are. And sometimes there are more options. If they were a veteran, there could be some financial piece there that could lessen the burden of an assisted living cost, because it is expensive. Maybe they try independent living for as long as possible with services, and then if this happens, we do this. It's planning. And because people are living so much longer, the expense is there, the burden. It is realistic to think about, to have that in the back of your mind, and you need that in your plan. You need to keep that in your mind, that your parent could live in assisted living for 20 years, and that's a big expense.
Right. No, and that's a good point. We were talking about that earlier, that, you know, medical advances as they are and just overall better health, you know, we are seeing people live much longer. And so I know in particular, somebody that I know, I think that selfishly they were trying to keep their parent in their home simply because they saw that as their inheritance. And I remember thinking, my goodness, they really need to make their parent safe and take that home, put it on the market, use that money for their parent to be safe in a different environment. And I always used to think, you know, my parents didn't work hard to simply leave everything to me. They need to be safe and in a good environment in their older years.
Right. I think that I'd see that changing in the future. Certainly, I think it's already happening. Is that, you know, maybe in the past when our parents didn't live as long, there was more to be left. But the cost of healthcare now is phenomenal, even if you have Medicare. And that's another thing I think a lot of people don't understand, what is covered by Medicare and what isn't. There's a lot that isn't. And so when your parent needs more care and you're getting these bills, these Medicare bills, these extra bills from the hospitals or the doctor's offices, there's a lot of expense here. So there may not be as much left. We may need to really take that focus and put it on how we're going to have be able to fund our parents. Like, we think about our kids' colleges, but maybe we really need to take a step back, and how are we going to have this care for our parents paid for? And if you're in that maze, if you get into that by accident, your parent's sick, and there you are, then you realize the need. But until you get there, I think a lot of people aren't looking at it proactively, that there is going to be this big need to somehow fund your parents. And what are we going to do? And it's very expensive.
Right. I mean, it's no longer the Walton TV series where you had 3 generations living under one roof. I mean, I think the complexities of just everyday life, it's nice to think that you could do for your parent as long as you could to keep them in their home. But I think the reality of your own families, your own work, it's a lot easier thought of than actually done. So I can imagine that for you, you are really, in many regards, a lifesaver. So how do people get to know that you're even out there? How do people get connected to someone like yourself?
Well, I think that's my challenge, is education. And like I said, mostly it comes in a crisis. But I've gotten referrals from many different sources. I think elder law attorneys, they certainly see, you might go into an elder law attorney to speak about your legal, your financial planning, which is very important and something that I would look at. But the lawyer isn't going to take the whole picture. They're going to look at the legal aspects, your planning, making sure that you have all of those things in place, which is hugely important. But they may not be looking at your medical history. They may not be looking at what you need socially. They're not going to probably go into your house and be able to help you find the paperwork that you need when you do your planning. And that's something that I can do. As a private care professional, I'm hired, and I can pretty much go into the house and do whatever you need, help you find these things, help you organize the paperwork before you go back into the lawyer. So I think attorneys definitely elder law attorneys see the value in using a care manager. Physicians, certainly they have the people who are coming in all the time. Maybe the daughter lives in California and the mother's coming in all the time for whatever reason, for whatever medical health reason, and the daughter keeps calling and wants to know more, and the physician doesn't have the time to follow up with that and be calling the daughter back. That's where a care manager could come into play. I could go with them to their doctor's appointment. That is, we become the communication hub of the family, even if there are multiple siblings. If, let's say, a client of mine had a doctor's appointment, and I could go from there and communicate that back to the siblings, exactly what the doctor said, what the recommendations are, and what's going on. So I think physicians could see also a big referral source there. They can see the need for a care manager and refer out that way. I get some referrals from private duty agencies, people who are already in the home, providing home care, and they see that there's a bigger need. Maybe someone's talking about connecting someone to social services, elder services. How do I do this? How do I fund that? And then they can call me in, and I've been called in that case too. It's anyone who gets to know a family member that is struggling with the care of an elder person.
Right, and I think too often, and I'm not sure if you get involved in this piece as well, but sometimes the caregivers are going through a lot of stress themselves, and they get forgotten in this. And are you in any way able to help the caregivers, which I suspect you do by saying, let me do this for you, but do you often intervene and say, you really need to talk to somebody, or you need to let go a little bit because this isn't healthy for you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we get into that role a lot. You can see the stress, but I do think once they get to the point of hiring a care manager, that it does just that hiring of us. Once they learn to trust us and they learn that the elder learns to trust us, that it really takes so much of the stress and the burden off of them. Just having a second opinion helps a lot. I recently had a client who was right at the point. She had a diagnosis, a fatal diagnosis, and it was when is the time, to intervene, and when should she go to hospice, and then it was in the hospital. Where is she going from here? Where is she going to go? Is she going to go to rehab? Is she going to go to the hospice house? What is going on here? Because I knew the client very well, I'd gotten to know her very well. I was at the hospital. They could ask me my opinion, and I could just be that second opinion. Someone who also knows her is not family, so I'm not as emotionally connected, although certainly I made an emotional connection with her, but I knew what she wanted from getting to know her, and I could say, I think it's time. I think the hospice house is the right place for her. So just being there, once they learn to trust us, once they learn that we're there to be that advocate for both of them, the family and the elder, then I think it just takes away a lot of the stress. And I think once we're hired, and I think people are skeptical who don't know a lot about our profession. Once we're hired, I don't think there are many people that would say that it wasn't a very valuable resource. I think it really becomes apparent as time goes on.
Sure. So I know that, as the daughter of a mother and as a nurse, these things are incredibly valuable. And then a few times you've mentioned when they hire us. So if someone in the audience is either going through this or anticipating that they're going to go through this, how does the, quote, hiring process work? How is it that you're paid, and how does it work for the average person out there?
Right, that's a good question. So they call typically, or they'll email through my website or from whoever referred them. And I do feel that it takes a lot. It really takes like a breaking point before they make that call, because we're a niche service, and it just, it really takes a lot to be able to call. So once they call, it's a free consultation. They tell me what's going on. I take a little bit of a history, and then I just try to gauge whether or not I could provide value to them. So they'll tell me the story, and I'll say, well, would it be valuable for someone to do this? What are you looking for? So that's the nice thing about being a private duty person, is that I can pretty much be what they need, what it is specifically to them that they're looking for. So then once they decide that they would like to go forward with an evaluation, I need to go out and evaluate the situation, whatever it may be. So I go in and I do my initial assessment of the situation. So if the elder's at home, I would go to the home and meet the elder and really just get the whole picture of what's going on. And then I go back and I write a care plan. So that's kind of the beauty of geriatric care management, is that when I come back, I have a care plan. So I meet the elder, I find out what the problems are from talking, getting the history from the family, from the elder, and I make a care plan. And it's all encompassing, it's holistic, it involves medical and whatever steps need to be taken there. If there are safety issues, that's usually first. What steps need to be taken to ensure safety? Legal, have they gotten their healthcare proxy, power of attorney? Do they have those things in place? Socially, are they withdrawing in their home? They're lonely. It's all encompassing, this care plan. So I come back to them for my second visit, and that takes a little while to pull all the pieces together, all my recommendations. Come back, I present the care plan, and then the family and the elder can decide if they want to go forward with care management, if they want me to take some of those steps, start going to the doctor's appointment, start being there, start monitoring the situation, or if they want to take it. So I can put all the steps into place, have the goals and the steps, my recommendations, and the family can take it and run from there. And sometimes they do that if they're local, and then a lot of times if they're not local or if they're professional and they just don't have the time because they have their own family, then I'll do the steps for them. And we kind of pick and choose what works in each individual situation, what they need from me.
Right, and I guess you can't override the benefit of just sort of the emotional well-being of knowing that a professional who does this for a living is really expediting and making things more succinct than someone who just doesn't know where to begin, and it becomes overwhelming and again, may not always make the best decisions in the interest of everyone.
Yeah, and we do charge hourly. I charge hourly. All care managers do. I have some packages. But I think if you look at it, if you really take the big picture, and if a lot of times a professional, let's say they're in their late 40s, 50s, are missing work. to go take care of their parent. If they live far away, or even if they don't, they're missing work. It's starting to become a burden in work. They're missing work. That's time away from work. That's money. So I think sometimes it is even, maybe it can be a cost savings in some cases. I have connected people to Mass Health, different funding sources that family member may not know is available. So it not only saves money, in a lot of cases, it saves time.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people have found that to be the case. When you're missing time away from work and time away from your family, it's nice to have someone else to be able to do that, and it is valuable.
Right. I mean, when you think about your own lives and all the complexities with that, then having to add this, and you know at some point it's going to happen. You just think it's next year, but again, sometimes an acute fall, and it just throws everything into a tailspin, and you have to act quickly. And to know that, you know, you are a valuable resource is extremely valuable. So Jennifer, once someone is in, let's just use an assisted living facility as an example, does your role end there, or do you come in and sort of evaluate subsequently that they're really thriving there and they're doing okay and they're happy? Does that extend into that area?
Absolutely, and I have a lot of clients right now who have come to me during a crisis and needed assisted living, and so I followed them along, helped them find the appropriate assisted living, because not all assisted livings are the same. So I go in and really help find which assisted living is best in each case, because they are all different, and it's an individual piece based on finances, based on the level of other residents in that assisted living. So I have the insight there. I have a lot of connections in the community, so I have a good, I feel confident when I recommend someone goes to a certain assisted living. So once they're there, especially if the family is not around, I will go in usually weekly. It's something that I decide on with the family and the elder, how many times they feel comfortable with me going. I have one in particular, her family lives in Texas, and so I go every week and I check on her. And if something were to come up, I'm there. You know, she can call me, she knows she can call me. We are 24/7 for calls. If she called me, then I would say, listen, this is what I think we should do. And I think that's really important. Once someone is on my caseload, once I've done that initial evaluation and made the plan and gotten to know them, they can call me at any point in a crisis, and then I can become involved again. So once they're on caseload, they're always on my caseload. They can call me, and I know them, and I know the family, and I can go right back out and see them. And I think that can be very helpful as well.
That's great. You know, we were talking earlier too, my husband had a godmother, Rita, who never had children, never married. And so I must say that she was very proactive for her generation, got her financial planning done, her, you know, what her wishes were, and as well as obtaining long-term care insurance when she was in her 40s, which is something that so many of us just, it's not even a thought. But importantly, when she got on in years and started having health issues, we did mobilize as many services as we could to keep her home, because that was important to her. But I think when the time came that she did need to go into a nursing home when she fell and broke her hip, I think one of the things that we noticed about her was, you know, even though you have services coming in, there's some socialization. But 24 hours a day is a long time, 7 days a week. And I think that what we found in her was that she really thrived in that social environment. It was eating with people, it was talking to people, it was playing bingo. And sometimes my husband and I would go visit her and she'd say, okay, well, bingo is in 5 minutes. And we'd be like, okay, well, we'll see you later. You know, that was our sort of cue to move along. But I think that that's a piece that, while we might have felt bad that she was going into a facility like that, she really thrived there. And I think that piece of it is something that we can't forget.
I think that's huge. I really do, Joanne, because I see, you know, that fight sometimes of the person doesn't want to lose their independence. And so they're at home and they feel like if they stay in their home, they're keeping that independence. They're protecting it fiercely. And they're afraid frequently that the family is going to pull them and put them somewhere where they don't want to be. And that's the fear of losing your independence. But at the same, when you spin that, and I see them in their home, if they've chosen to stay home, they get lonely. They're isolated. They can't drive anymore. Their friends maybe are passing away, or just or their friends can't drive anymore, and they're lonely and they're isolated. And when I go in and say that to them, well, what do who do you talk to? Who do you socialize with? Do you wish you could speak with peers and really, be involved? And there are senior centers, and those are fabulous. And if someone is home and not going to a senior center, that's one of the first pieces I look at. But I do see that evolution from being at home and being lonely, and not having, and just feeling disconnected, to moving into an assisted living. And once a transition occurs, because it's a huge transition in a time of life when change is the hardest. As you get older, that change is harder and harder. So once they can transition, if they feel comfortable where they are, you can really see them start to open up and be happy again, because there is that social piece. They're talking to people on their level about things that they want to talk to about, and it can be a really nice and beautiful thing. And they're treated with, when they're treated with respect, and someone's making them nice dinner, it can really be nice. But it's that initial fear of losing your independence that keeps people from taking the step sometimes to getting to the assisted living.
Right, sure. And I'm curious if you've ever experienced something similar to this and how you handled it. But some years ago, I was asked to help out a friend of mine, and her mom was living with her, and really had noticed a really substantial change in what she determined to be her personality, the way she kind of did her everyday activities of daily living. And so she asked me to go with her to the doctor's office, and she was evaluated by a neuro psychiatrist. And the end of the evaluation was that she was really having a medication reaction, too many medications, sort of interacting with each other. Metabolism was different, just everything. And consequently, it was really a medication issue, and once addressed, did help somewhat. But have you had those similar experiences?
Yes, and I've seen it on a level in a nursing home, when I worked in a nursing home, as when I did home care, is that a lot of times cognition is something we're looking at. We call, let's say you don't live near your elder, you live near your loved one, your parent, and you're calling them once a week, and all of a sudden they start to sound different. Something seems off, and you're thinking, oh boy, this is it. Like there's dementia, it's kicking in. But it could be medicine related. It could be a urinary tract infection. It could be medical, or it might not be. And that is something that I can help tease out. I do cognitive evaluations, just screen typically when I first go in, just to kind of get a picture of where someone is. And then I would be able to, as a care manager following them, know if something had changed. And ideally, I would be at the doctor's appointment to know there was a new medicine. Maybe that's what's causing it. So I think once I've established a relationship with a person, then I would be able to also know that something happened and be there to flag it and say, hey, something's not right here, what's going on? And neuropsych evaluations are a really big part of my job. Because when I get called in, typically is my mom safe to live at home cognitively? What's happening? Dementia, all of those words get thrown around, and they want to know what's going on. Where is she? What level is she functioning at? Or my dad? And that's something I can help doing my own cognitive testing, but then really oftentimes referring out to a neuropsych exam, just to get a real clear picture of what's going on with cognition.
Sure. No, that's important, because again, if physically they're doing well, I think that children need to stay in touch enough with their parents to begin to assess whether or not there are any changes, and to know that you are a resource and these specialties are out there, I think will be key in, again, keeping them safe for as long as we can in their home. But again, when the time comes that they can't do that, to know that someone like you is there to sort of jump into the picture and help out. I think that for anyone in the audience, that's listening to this program, watching this program, either is going through this themselves or anticipates going through it in short order, I think I really appreciate you coming today and really sharing with us all that you do and all the things that we need to think about as hardworking people, and we're parents, we're aunts and uncles. We wear so many hats right now. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your expertise, that your practice even exists out there, I think people need to know that there's someone to go to. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.